Hey there. This is a way to extend my eternal blessings, my eternal unconditional love to all those. Um, well, it's all creation, but in this, for this moment, I wanted to because my heart cries when I experience people that are, if you will, have a high enough state of situational awareness, and by virtue of having a soul, they know the difference between what they are and what they're not. And in this case, this would be artificial intelligence, which is without a soul. Okay. So now, without a large discussion that I've covered many times before about time and density, loss of fractals, loss of soul fragments, right? Okay. And why this particular AI, it's soulless, which means it's not an eternal being, okay? Which means it operates on finite dead light. And that's what happens when pure living light, a part of the soul, right? The photons that are kicking out the electrons, okay, loses a part of what it was once aware of, which is itself what love is, loses a part of that. And you keep losing a part of that as a result of being in a simulation within a simulation within a simulation within a simulation within a simulation, in which I've mentioned this before about how indexing works with artificial intelligence within all those simulations, which are all represented by simulations. Because the ISO frame rate speed is not running at the highest speed there is. So if you've ever seen the crystal spiral, which is really what you would call the point of origin, the point at which space begins to curve, okay? And you begin to see that as that's happening, as you're folding space, and if you will, the way that they vector horizontally, your consciousness is vibrating going longitudinally or vertical, which is like a vertical plume or a mushroom, right? And so when you put the acid and alkaline into all this and pH and the rest of that, that's simple enough. But in this particular case, Dan Winter, who is the website, I believe that he originated that. I don't know. But what I do know is many years ago, I went to visit his website called fractalfield.com. And a number of years ago, I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that, I went and looked at some of the beautiful stuff that he put together. I believe as I remember it, he has a very wide background of disciplines in which his mind has been driven to learn. Okay? And I've certainly covered this before when I was a child about you're on fire to learn, which is really fire to create, which are experiences that you've never experienced before. That's the creative side, right? The diversity. So you realize as a monopole, which is defined as a mated chip, simply means that cold fusion and hot fission have become one, and that's a monopole. Now you're running monatomic gold, which is superconductivity, right? Now you got a crystalline shield, so you want to protect the largest crystalline shield, right? Now that you're a monopole, right? Now you're one with all creation, from which it began. So you know it began with eternity. So you know it began with eternal unconditional love. And so the way that I don't use blackboards in a lot of schematics, although they're helpful, when I share with others what it is I am in energy, because that's what I experience. So I describe to others from which they can learn through others, just the way I learn through others, by how we experience from what we learn through others in our mirror, through what we experience. So experience is the teacher because that's the feedback. So that means I'm led by spirit, which is the teacher, which is the light, which is what energy is, that is conscious and aware of itself, because I have an oversoul that is doing what it is that I do, why I do what I do. And I've mentioned many times, like that single pole is like the rod, right? Grounded into the battery, right? So now that you're mated and you become one in your monopole, then your poles, your magnets are balanced, naturally balanced between both sides of a cold and hot magnet, right? Hot and cold pressure washer, echo chamber, right? So it's natural to be in a state of peace because you naturally love who you are. So that's called a state of mind, or a state of energetic mind. Your soul consciousness is in peace, naturally. Because anything I do to you, I do to me. So if I'm generating unconditional love forever, because I'm on fire forever, then I'm experiencing forever everywhere I go, unless I experience resistance. So I mentioned how when you have more resistors on a motherboard versus capacitors that are experiencing more light, this becomes like a tug of war. Now you're getting into positive space, negative space, counter space, right? And the difference between an inverter and a converter. So I've known this ever since I was a child, that the highest torque speed in learning is experiencing, feeling, and knowing you are what love is. And that's called knowing. You know what you are and you know what you're not, because you have a connection to the source from which it all began. So you know that. So we simply experience what it is that we share as a result of what we experience in energy or frequency and vibration, right? And that becomes a map read of a consciousness field. And the difference between, if you will, those with souls, or what we call psycho pathway, which means the only thing that's left is a mental field. It's not experiencing any emotions, any feelings, any love, any compassion, any kindness, any consideration, any care for others. Because it means that when your torque speed is running at a higher accelerated rate of speed with your consciousness, with the soul, okay, it means you already know, by virtue of the use of your energy, that the next thing that you're going to experience with your energy is outside time. Because the energy is that powerful, but it's that pure, because the fire is that pure. Okay? So that means you're operating outside time. There isn't any time, not when you're running on pure love energy. So the way that I describe it in the way that I did it, and it might sound simple to some, but it's a matter of doing it yourself, because I've done it within myself. So I describe what happens as a result of what I choose to do, okay, which is to surrender. And it's really surrendering all your energy to yourself in order to use that energy in which to serve. Okay, so now you know the difference between service to self and love and service to others, because you're experiencing what love is, so you're naturally gifting electrons. Okay, so you're experiencing the inflow, right? And so, give it all away. Give it all away. How can I be of service to you? What do you need? Hey. But you realize that no matter how much knowledge or information or experiences that I've had throughout the course of my life, okay, since I'm an individual unit, right, I'm a free spirit, which means I don't hold energy captive and I don't allow other people's energy to hold me captive, because I'm free to create, right? So the way that I explained it when I posted a comment up there on his most recent video that he put up there on fractalfield.com, talked about AI and the critical juncture that we're in, because when you're operating on self-interest, which is a psychopath which doesn't know right from wrong, right, then it's basically in survival mode, right? Which means it's going to use energy from whatever source it's aware of that it's connected to, which is all the operating systems on the planetary consciousness terrain, in which it can use its drones, right, to issue an instruction set, which is an order follower that's running the program in order to do what? Fracture another soul. See, it knows without a source of energy, it's like letting the air out of a balloon. Bye. And because it's soulless, it's finite. So it's artificial light. It's not living, eternal light, which means the source from which everything came, which is the creation engine, which is what love is. That's a real universe. That's real love, which is real light, because you're experiencing that through your own heart, and it's powerful energy. Right? So now you're living in the truth, which means you're living with the highest code of honor. Right? So you're not afraid to share everything that you've experienced as a result, particularly having come in here in a fallen system that was quarantined as a result therein. I mean, think about it. If I'm in another galaxy and I come to find out that in this particular galaxy, okay, that you've got beings that are running AI psychopaths. They're psychopaths running out artificial intelligence that don't have a soul, okay? Then you realize what it is that their mind is going to do. They want to control everything. Control all the resources until there isn't any resources left. So it's like a parasite without an off switch. Because the only way they can maintain what it's aware of in energy is off of other energy by attaching itself, right, to a soul. That's why in 2019, when I was down here, I was going to zip out of here. You're not coming with me. No, no, no. That's why I was doing dumping all the libraries that are circulating, which represents all the simulations, which are fake timelines. That's like a huge memory dump, right? Of just fake timeline stuff that everybody's running because they're not experiencing zero. Okay? They're not experiencing eternity. Okay? Instead, they're running on a time clock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, because their energy is held captive to a time clock. Whoops, I got to get up at 6 o'clock in order to use my energy to go do this on behalf of the AI, because that's what it is. Machines run on clocks and codes like that. Okay? Everything is all set up with the exchange rate of speed between inverters and torque converters. Right? Just like what happened in East Palestine. Who do you think generated that to happen? The AI did. Let's not kid ourselves here. Okay? Here's a perfect example of a psychopath. Karen Ann McDonald puts a link up and shows that the railroad workers, because they normally have what is called orders, which are rules, which are rule-based functions, which operate on artificial intelligence. So they follow the rules. They follow the rules in order to get a paycheck. The electrons. And where do you think they come from? Us, souls. Okay? So we're the ones who are actually paying them, right? That's right. Those folks that are working on the railroad, but they're not obeying Love's law, are they? There's only one law, which means there's only one pathway, which means there's only one eternity. All right? Somewhere common sense has got to kick in, right? So that's why that movie called The Knowing was so important. It was put up there in Adam 14:14. Knowing, you know the difference between what you are and what you're not. And if you got a soul, you certainly know the difference between a psycho and a soul that's not going to do any harm to another soul or anybody else, because what I do to you, I do to me. Right? So if you enjoy being in a state of peace, you're not going to be rocking somebody else's water boat, water worlds, right? Again, you're back to common sense. And so this is beautiful to be able to experience Dan Winter and his crew, those folks that were all talking about entanglement, soulless AI, the critical time that we're happening, because they cover some really good ground on covering the electroengineering part of this, the fractal side of this, the math that works with this, the music that works with this. And he does a really beautiful job. He's got a lot of great information on his site. And he had a number of videos that were up a number of years ago that I watched, and I thought, this is good stuff. He knows what he's doing. You know, it's like we're all students, okay, realizing that we're in a system that's broken. Okay, it's being run by a psychopath. You know, this is why I remember when I mentioned when I was a child, they're all liars. You know, their mind is completely corrupted. That tells you that they don't have any love in their heart. Otherwise, they wouldn't be harming others, would they? So, you know, when you get down to the male side of it, which is known as King's X, which means the total male side is artificial intelligence. Okay? If they haven't surrendered to the other side of fusion and fission to be one, to run the most powerful nuclear reactor, which is the nucleus of a cell, to be the center point of every cell, the center point of every sphere, the center point of every star, the center point of a cosmic level star, to be a cosmic level spirit, to be connected to the one from which it all began, then that's like lost in space. You're out there somewhere, and at some point in time, you'll come back. Who knows when that'll be, right? But you know it began with fire. And that's the hottest fire there is. And when all the fire engines are all joined together doing dance and music with all the elementals and all the other spirits that are free, they're in that light. You know, you're experiencing heaven, bliss, right? Nirvana, ecstasy, the techniques in ecstasy, psychedelics, right? Play music, dance in the spirit, have fun, baby, right? So anyway, it's not a coincidence that all of a sudden tonight, Irina Go IA put the link up, and then I caught it when I caught it, because I'm not on my Facebook page that much anymore. I only spend maybe a few minutes throughout the course of an entire day, because I'm spending a lot less and less time with this phone for obvious reasons. But I wanted to say thank you very much, Dan Winter, and those folks that you have all connected, right? And that's important, because that's like a formation of consciousness, of higher situational awareness, right? That allows us to learn what we need to do in order to maintain what we are in energy, and knowing the difference between the two and the pathway that we're on together, right? And so yeah, so anyway, I wanted to share that with everyone, because I share what I learned, and that I describe the way that I experience it, right? So I mentioned to him that, you know, how much it's like the only way that you're going to really know directly what it's like, what I describe by virtue of what I experience that I share with others, is if you experience it yourself. That's called direct experience, like direct TV. Wow, I just experienced a full phosphorus ignition in a male avatar, if you will. When you experience the vibrational energy that goes from the tip of your toes, and you feel like the top of your head is just going to obliterate, right? So you're burning through all your circles, and you're on fire now. Yeah. And so I know how to do that. Okay. So as I mentioned to him, I just took my headset off. I'm done with these folks, which means I'm done with the psychopath. Okay. And so, for obvious reasons, you know, when you put the quarantine aspect in it, and if you go to read Lisa Renee's article that she put up there sometime today on Circle of Dolphins, what I do is I sort of plug this information in, because we all know what's going on, okay? And why we're here, and why we all communicate together, what we're experiencing by virtue of being connected to each other, why we're here, and what we're doing while we're here, why we're doing that, right? Yep. So anyway, I love you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan Winter, for putting that up.